how a florist turned my life and my heart upside down. I came for a bouquet and left with 1,000 questions in my heart. It had been a few days since I had moved into that neighborhood, but every time I passed around the flower shop, it caught my attention. It was a house, of course. The shop on the first floor, and his house is probably on the second. It felt cozy, warm, and drew my gaze every single time. The sunlight spilled from the windows, and the fragrance of fresh blossom lingered in the air, calming and inviting me. It was perfect contrast with my music store, down by some blocks away, with loud sounds and laughter and all types of instruments you could think of. After a hectic week, I needed calm and flowers for Eri's recital. At just 10 years old, my little girl was just about to take center stage for her first solo performance. So I entered the flower shop, but I didn't expect to find him, the florist, hands deft, focused, arranging lilies with practiced grace. His dark eyes flickered to mine when I stepped inside. For a second, I forgot why I was there. Just a moment, he said, without looking up, his voice deep, steady. I nodded, watching him finish with a customer before me. When she left, he turned his full attention to me. Good afternoon. How can I help? His tone was polite but distant. A bouquet for my daughter, I said quickly. Her first recital. Something sweet, elegant. His gaze assessed me briefly. Wild, my blonde hair. Tattoos, rippled jacket, before he began sorting flowers. His hands moved with precision, silent, except for the rustling of the petals. Before I could say more, the door chimed behind me. A sharp voice interrupted. Hey! Anybody helping here? The tension in the florist's shoulders was immediate, telling me this rude interruption wasn't the first time. I'll be with you shortly, he said evenly. The customer scoffed. I'm in a hurry. So was I. But I wasn't about to let this guy steamroll us both. Why don't you grab a coffee? We're all waiting today. My tone was pleasant, but my stare was deadpan. The man hesitated, then left with a huff. Thanks, the florist muttered, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. No problem. What do you recommend? Jasmine's. Sweet. Celebratory. Perfect for her. He wrapped the bouquet quickly, the precision of his work mesmerizing. Anything else? Actually, yes, I hesitated. I need something for a blind date. He paused, glancing at me with faint amusement. Try a strelitzia. It's a flower of courtship. It looks like a bird, so it may seem strange. But it's pretty and significant. Or azazels, if you want something simpler. I smirked. What if I stood him up and kept talking to you? Sounds more pleasant to me. His lips twitched. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A real laugh. Deep and rich and surprising. It caught me off guard. The sound so rare and unguarded that I found myself smiling, almost staring. That laugh, it wasn't just beautiful. It was mesmerizing, like peeling back the smallest glimpse of something hidden beneath the surface. Shame. You're just my type. He just shook his head, a bit surprised, and slightly blushing as he handed me the bouquet, his fingers brushing lightly against mine. The contact was brief, but warm, and for a fleeting second, it sent an unexpected flutter through me. I gripped the bouquet tighter, surprised by my own reaction. That'll be $60. I paid, then asked. Your name? Tatsuya, he said. Kaito, I replied, grinning. Your new annoying neighbor. Oh, self-awareness is important, he deadpanned, but that faint smirk remained. I laughed and just left the store as the other dude came in. I walked away, but couldn't stop thinking about him. There was something I couldn't put together. He was charming in a way. He definitely was not trying to impress you. Guarded in a way that didn't make sense to me. His cold outside hid something warm like his store. And for the first time in a while, I found myself wanting to explore someone. Almost home, and the question in my heart was only beginning to swirl. Tatsuya unsettled me. Why? His secret warmth and the coziness of his place lingered on my desire, but it was his cold eyes that I couldn't shake off my mind. Next afternoon. It was one of those usual quiet afternoons. I was walking with Eri, just finished picking her up from school, and her hand swinging loosely in mine as we chatted about her new favorite piano song. That was one of those rare, easy moments between the busy errands where I could just enjoy being her dad without any heaviness of adulthood on top of me. And then, And that's when I spotted him. Tetsuya. Tetsuya was just walking across the street, dark hair catching the light, as he walked alongside a young boy who looked just like him. They were laughing, and that sight, so free and spontaneous, caught me off guard, confirming the hidden warmth I knew he had in him. "Yoo-hoo! Flower boy!" I shouted. He stopped mid-step, his head turning in my direction. His son looked up at me with confusion, and for a second, I thought I'd made a mistake. His lips were curved into a reluctant smile, and he waved at me, but didn't cross the street. If he wouldn't, I would. "Who's that, Papa?" Eri tugged at my sleeve. "A friend. Let's say hi." Tetsuya's composure was back by the time we approached, his guarded expression firm and in place. His son, though, seemed curious and friendly. "Hi, Papa's friend," Eri greeted him brightly. "I'm Eri, and I love piano." "Hi," the boy said with a small smile. "I'm Haruki. Are you new around here?" She nodded eagerly. "We just moved. Do you like music?" "A little," he said. "I play guitar, but I'm not that good." "That's not true," Tetsuya said, his tone softening. "You're improving every day." Eri's eyes lit up. "You should visit Papa's store. He's great with music and can teach you cool stuff." "Not everything," I added with a chuckle, "but I can definitely give a few tips if you stop by." I could feel Tetsuya's gaze on me, steady and unreadable, when Haruki glanced at him asking for approval with his young puppy eyes. Tetsuya nodded slightly. "Maybe, if you keep your grades good this week." "Ugh! I hate math," Haruki muttered, but his excitement over the idea of visiting a store was clear. As the kids chatted, I stole a glance at Tetsuya. The way he watched Haruki with his faint smile softening his features made my heart skip a beat. It was rare to see him like this, unguarded, and it stirred something deeper in me. He caught me looking, and our eyes met. His expression flickered, as if unsure whether to retreat behind his walls or let a moment linger. Neither of us looked away, and for a fleeting second, the air between us felt charged, like a conversation neither of us dared to start. "First time I've seen you outside the shop," I said, breaking the silence before it stretched too long. "I've lived here since Haruki was born." "It's convenient," he replied. "Polite, but distant." "For you," Haruki chimed in with a grin. "I'm always stuck carrying groceries." "You're young," Tetsuya said with a smirk. "Deal with it." Eri giggled, her laughter contagious, and Haruki's grin widened. It seemed so easy for them to connect, their voices filling the space between, the quiet that lingered between Tetsuya and me. I noticed the slight tension creeping back into his posture, and decided it was time to move on, even though I wanted nothing more than to stay and unravel the guarded man before me. "Haruki, the invitation Eri gave us is still on. Okay, whenever you want to stop by, I'll teach you some cool stuff." Haruki nodded with enthusiasm, but my gaze stayed on Tetsuya. For the briefest moment, his walls seemed to waver, his expression softening. "Thank you," he said quietly. The simple words warmed my heart in a way I wasn't prepared for. As we parted ways, Eri turned to me, her face glowing. "He's cool," she said simply. I smiled, my thoughts tangled in the details about Tetsuya, a man I barely knew, but had stolen all my curiosity and interest. There was something underneath those walls of his, something I couldn't resist wanting to understand. And as much as I tried to push the thought away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time Tetsuya would leave me with questions I desperately wanted answers to. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time Tetsuya would leave me with questions I desperately wanted answered. The next weekend, the community charity event was supposed to be simple, a day bright, cheerful, filled with music and food and laughter. But as I approached Tetsuya's floral display, I could sense his tension from across the way. He looked like a balloon close to bursting, surrounded by a half mess of assembled bouquets, ribbons strewn all over the floor, and some flowers still uncut. His jaw was tight, and his hands moved with the precision and desperation of someone who couldn't wait to get this all over with. "Need a hand?" I asked as I came over. He barely spared me a glance before muttering, "No, I'm fine." Not convincing enough. "Come on, flower boy, let me help." I stepped closer, setting the coffee I'd been carrying on the floor. That earned me a glare, but no protest as I started gathering loose stems. He kept working in silence while I tied off some bouquets. "Quit trying to keep the atmosphere casual." "You're doing great," I said, handing him a freshly made adornment. His laugh was dry and humorless. If this is great, I'd hate to see what terrible looks like. Give yourself some credit. I overheard the ladies talking. Your work is admired, I said, trying to cheer him up. You're keeping it all together just fine. Keep going. But he wasn't, and we both knew it. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the flower, and that bothered me more than I wanted to admit. The words slipped out before I could stop them. You know, Tetsuya, you don't have to do it all alone. His hands thrown midair. He turned, his expression darker, and I realized that hit a nerve. What do you mean by that? I hesitated for a moment, trying to ease the tension. I mean, you seem like you have a lot of people around you who want to help, I said. He looked at me in clear disbelief. Like me, I added with a smile. For a moment, his lips twitched, as if a smile was fighting its way through. He let out a reluctant chuckle, a quiet, warm sound that made the mess around us feel lighter. You're persistent, he muttered, shaking his head slightly, but his hand moved with a little less tension as he arranged the flowers I handed him. That's a part of my charm, I replied, earning a fleeting glance that almost felt amused. It felt like progress, so I decided to push my luck. Speaking of charm, you know, Tatsuya, I was maybe thinking we could go out sometime. Grab a coffee or dinner. My treat. His hands faltered again, and this time he fully turned to me for a moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Vulnerability, surprise, maybe even curiosity. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a guarded expression I'd come to recognize. Why? He asked, his voice quieter, almost uncertain. Why not? I said, keeping my tongue tight, even though my heart was racing. You work hard, and I think you deserve a break. Besides, I like talking to you. His lips pressed into a thin line, his defense quickly rebuilding. You're always talking to me, always trying to help. What's your deal? He asked, his tone edged with annoyance, but his eyes betrayed something softer, something unspoken. I sighed, not wanting to push too far. Maybe I just think you're worth getting to know, I said simply. For a second, he didn't reply, his gaze dropping to the flowers in his hand. Then, with a small shake of his head, he went back to arranging them. You're impossible, he murmured, but there was a bite to it, and I couldn't help but smile. Whatever. I have nothing to lose anyways, so I just spilled. Haven't I made myself clear? I scratched my chin. I want to know you, and soon take you on a fun date. I felt the weight of my words on him, but it didn't stop me. Eri and Haruki get along just fine. I pointed at them playing together with some petals nearby. We could be friends too. Besides my romantic interests, why do you keep pushing me away is the question here. His expression hardened just like his grip around the cute lily. Don't you think that personality of yours is too much? You just can't swoop in my life like a thunder and start trying to fix things you don't even know about. I gave an ironic chuckle. That's precisely what I'm trying to do here. Understand you. And you know about the date and all. I'm not joking, but I'm not an idiot. I can see your boundaries just fine. I'll just promise not to stop flirting, I said with a laugh. His gaze pierced me, and the air around him got heavier as he stepped closer. Fine. You want to know me? There it is. My wife died. I'm all alone raising Haruki and dealing with the store, which was our dream, he said in a low voice. But it felt like he was shouting. And as for people wanting to help, it always feels like they're prying over me. The pity, the sorry. I can't stand it. Is it information enough for you now? His words hit me like a punch, and I stepped back, a bit hurt by the two reasons I wouldn't deliberate on. That's not what I'm trying to do. I didn't even know your backstory. Doesn't it count? Then stop, he said. He said as intensely as before. Just stop. Before I could respond, I looked to the side and didn't meet my daughter, nor his son. Where are the kids? I asked out loud to myself. Tatsuya moved first, scanning through the crowd. My chest was filled with a panic as I called out for Eri. My voice lost between those people. He was equally frantic, his normal stiff behavior now desperate as he called out for Haruki. We got out of the stadium and went to the park. We saw them in a blink. They were on the edge of the near entrance, and when I saw those blonde hair and cute smile, relief hit like a wave. Eri and Haruki were sitting together, drawing in the dirt with sticks like nothing happened. Eri! I shouted before hugging her. You scared me to death. What have I told you? Haruki looked at Tetsuya's guilt flashing on his face. I'm sorry, we didn't mean to. Don't you ever think about doing that again. Tetsuya scolded him with a tone that had more irritation with me than the situation itself. Haruki flinched, just like Eri. Hey, I said, turning to him. They're kids. Don't be so harsh. I looked over at them with a soft smile. You learned your lesson, right? As they nodded, Tatsuya glared at me. What do you even know about parenting anyways? You may leave Eri freely, but I don't, and that's exactly why I don't want to let you in, he said in one breath. I felt hurt, and once more, my impulsiveness betrayed me. At least I'm not so emotionally distant that my kid would get that guilty about doing child play, I said, my eyes rolling. His face darkened, and I could see the sting coming back. At least I'm not so busy playing fun dad, and yes, teaching how to grow up properly in this already tough enough world. The argument escalated. Raw and limited filtered, and it wasn't about the kids anymore. We were talking straight about ourselves, about the cracks, the grief, and the insecurities we wouldn't admit easily. Not only for you, goddamn the world is hard, flower boy. If you'd let me get close to you, I'd have told you that I'm infertile, and Eri is adopted, and that ended my last marriage, just as well as your dead wife. The words came out before I could feel the weight of their meaning. And then the storm hit. The rain came down in sheets, so dense, drenching the event and us, mud forming around our shoes. I pushed them gently towards the street in the direction of my car, where the kids jumped inside instantly, while Tetsuya hesitated, as the rain continued to pound against the car. The silence between us was unbearable. The kids sat quietly in the back seat, their earlier mischief replaced by a subtle atmosphere. I gripped the wheel tightly, focusing on the road, but my eyes kept flickering to Tatsuya in the passenger seat. He sat stiffly, his arms crossed and jaw tight, staring straight ahead, like the rain outside was the only thing that existed. His damp hair clung to his forehead, and wet, and water dripped onto his collar, but he didn't seem to notice or care. I wanted to say something, anything to cut through the tension. The words were right there on the tip of my tongue. I couldn't figure out how to make them come out right. My gaze flickering to him again, lingering this time. His knuckles were white, where his hands gripped his arms. Was he angry? Hurt? Both? I didn't know. The weight of this silence pressed down on me. Thanks, he said suddenly, his voice low and curt. I blinked, caught off guard. What? For finding Haruki and Eri, he muttered. His tone clipped, but his words still carried a weight that made my chest tighten. I nodded, keeping my eyes on the road. Of course, I replied, trying to sound steady, even though my pulse quickened. The silence returned, but this time it felt different. Softer, maybe. There was still tension, still a gulf between us, but his words had cracked something open. I chanced another glance at him. He was still tense, his posture rigid, but there was something in the way his shoulders sagged, ever so slightly. A flicker of vulnerability he probably didn't even realize he was showing. I swallowed the urge to say more. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside. I wasn't sure if pushing further would make things better or worse. Instead, I decided to give up as well. I gave a tired sigh. I won't bother you anymore, I said finally, gripping the wheel as we came closer to the street. Good, he said, and I felt my stomach hurt. I stopped the car in front of his garden, but before I left, I said, just remember, you don't have to do it all alone. Admit that to yourself, and maybe life won't be that heavy. He shut my door with strength, but I ignored it. The storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil inside me. Once Eri was asleep, and I was lying in my warm bed, I couldn't help but wonder if I helped or made it only worse. Either way, things can't be undone, and getting closer wouldn't be easy. Ironically, the next day the rain didn't stop, and I had the feeling it was punishing me for what I said, or maybe mirroring our insides. Either way, Eri skipped school, and stayed with me in the store the whole day. Didn't have too many clients for obvious reasons, but still had a fun day with her by my side. A thunder loud enough was heard by us minutes ago, and I saw the street across mine, having its lights shut off. I went to check my generator, and thanked for that purchase, because that'd leave me with good minutes to finish my chores before closing. I was polishing the neck of a guitar, when the bell on the door flooded the silent store. My heart skipped a bit, but I kept my cool. Hey, flower boy, I said. The air was cold, and it felt good. I liked the cold. Maybe that's why I liked Tatsuya. "Music man," he said, and I tilted my eyes. "How can I help you?" I asked with irony in my tongue. He sighed, and Haruki came in, hugging Eri, and started the conversation like they'd known each other for years. It was adorable. I moved my head to Tatsuya again, and he was coming closer. "Keep it cool," I said to myself. "I'll have to bite my own tongue," he said after a cough. "The power on my house is dead, and the neighbors said it might take a while since there's been an accident on the freeway nearby. So I told him to come here." Haruki interrupted with a smile. "Can we shower at your house?" "Yay! Pajama night!" Eri shouted, and I looked at him. "Hot shower? Why not? I'll close the store in a few." "And charging phones and notebooks," Haruki said again. "Thanks," Tetsuya said low. "I just realized today that we don't have one single thing that doesn't require power." "Not a problem," I said, smiling, as I finished polishing the instrument, and the boy went closer. "Whoa," he said, looking at the vintage model. "These are amazing!" "Want to try one?" I offered. "Really?" he asked and looked at his dad, who was lingering by the door with his arms crossed, like he wasn't sure what he was even doing there. "It's fine," I said to him. "He won't break anything. And if he does, I would never charge you for it." I blinked in a funny way to ease the tension. He sighed, but gave a little smile back in Haruki's direction, clearly enjoying his excitement. "If you say so. If you say so," he replied to me. It took about an hour with me playing him and the guitar. He was great. Too much potential. And I taught him a song he said he struggled with, but turned out just fine. "Papa, can we go home? I'm hungry." "Sure, sweetie," I said, relocating the guitar in the right place. Then I looked at Tetsuya. "I won't bite. Let's go." At my apartment, the kids made themselves at home, while I grabbed towels. I had some lasagna to heat, so I did that, and there was no signs of the rain stopping. After all, the four of us had showered. I could see the unease in Tetsuya's eyes, while we stood in the kitchen with me taking the food out of the oven. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he replied quickly. "This isn't something I often do." I grinned. "What? Accept help?" He almost gave me a half smile. "Well, yes. Then get used to it," I said simply while grabbing the plates and calling the kids to eat. Once we all had our bellies filled, the kids went to Eri's room to play, and I sat by the living room with a still uncomfortable Tetsuya. I opened some wine, and we drank in that weird silence when a loud thunder was heard, and the lights flickered once. Then it flickered once more, dying for good, making us now in the dark and the silence. "You've got to be kidding," I muttered, pulling out my phone and turning the flashlight. Eri came running in, and I laughed while hugging her softly. "We'll head back," Tetsuya said fast, but I interrupted him. "To a house with no power. In this weather. Relax, flower boy. I have enough candles." I left them standing there and went to the kitchen drawer, then returned with a pack of lights for the kids' room, and the bathroom, and the living room. Once back on the couch, I noticed Tetsuya still up, stiff, hands in his pockets, watching me like he was unsure of what to do with all that. "Come on," I said, gesturing to the carpet. "Sit. Sit. Unless you're planning to stay up all night like a horse." He hesitated but came closer, his expression softening by flickering candlelight. The noises from the bedroom stopped. "I think they fell asleep," I commented, laughing softly. "They're comfortable together." He nodded yeah. "Haruki hasn't had many friends like her." "You mean the ones that don't make him break an arm by escalating a tree?" I teased. He gave me a small but genuine chuckle. "Something like that." Silence followed us again as we sipped our drinks. But it wasn't uncomfortable. I'd still admit there was something buzzing around us. I couldn't ignore it. And when I noticed his jaw ease, I decided to tease him again. "Do you ever let yourself breathe?" I asked with caution, looking into my glass instead of him. He frowned his eyebrows. "What do you mean?" he asked. I chose my words carefully next. "Everything you carry, all the ways put up. It's gotta be exhausting." "It's not that simple," he said before drinking some more. "I know, but you don't have to carry it alone." He didn't respond right away, and I convinced him, and I convinced myself he wouldn't reply, but he said in a low, whispered voice, "I don't know if I can live more relaxed." I leaned in a bit closer, as if I was sharing a secret. "You don't have to know. You just have to try. For a moment, something in his expression shifted, like he was considering my words. He ran his hand through his hair and said, "We should get some rest. I'll sleep here. You can have a blanket." "If I say you can sleep in my bed, will you punch me?" I joked. "Definitely," he answered, with another half smile. I grabbed him a pillow and a blanket, wishing him a good night. I checked the kids and came back to my room, but sleep was a difficult task. A few hours later, around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleeping and decided to have some tea, and by that time I reached the kitchen. I saw Tatsuya having the same idea, his hand already warped around a mug. "You're still here," I said, sliding into the chair across from him. He gave a soft snort. I smiled wide. "I meant, you're still awake, not trying to escape whatever this is." He bit his lip. "You push too much, you know that," he said in a teasing tone, then continued, "I made some tea. Hope you don't mind my unpolite manners. I'd forgive you if you made me some tea as well." I said that, and he rolled his eyes in amusement. "And you don't push enough." I completed as I saw him filling the water to heat. The comment earned me a sharp look, but there was no real anger or coldness in it. It's been a long time since anyone cared enough to push, he said as he turned the oven. "How long have you been a widower, if I may ask this?" He sighed, but sat in front of me for a while. We waited for the water to boil. "Haruki's 14. So, 12 years. I gave out a breath of surprise. I said it was too long. He joked with no humor. I leaned forward, resting my forearm on the table. "I care, Tetsuya. About you, Haruki, and..." I hesitated for a bit, but gestured a circle, meaning to the house and what was going on there. "All of this. I care." The kettle made his noise and he went to it, serving another mug and passing it on to me. His expression was unreadable, but I didn't regret saying any of it. I'd like for him to believe in me, and if it meant pushing a bit more, I'd easily do it. I was drawn to him in a way I haven't felt in a long time. "Tell me more about Eri's adoption," he said suddenly. I smiled. "My ex wanted kids, but he preferred my genes. We went to a clinic and found a friend who would be the surrogate, but in the end, the exam told us I was unable to make kids." He took a sip. "And why did you end it? You two?" he asked, and I adored hearing his curious voice. I shrugged. I think I wasn't enough anymore. Then one day, I passed by the hospital where my brother works, and I met Eri's mom. She wanted to give the kid away, and we bonded. 5 months later, I had her in my arms and never wanted to let go. I could see his shoulder relaxing slowly as I spoke, and it felt like snow melting in the sun. Warm. Worth it. I guess I needed to see more outside of my own world, he said. He said after some minutes of quiet. "That's what I've been saying," I smiled. He looked at me, his dark eyes directly into mine, his engines running at full speed. I could see the change inside him, his fears, his insecurities, his hidden desires, his grief, and his miss. I thought I'd leave once I finished the tea, but he surprised me once more. He touched my hand so softly that I didn't even move, afraid I'd scare him away. "It's not easy, Kaito," he said. His voice tingled with vulnerability, mixed with a warning and an apology. I smiled. "Good. Easy's boring." He finally laughed for good, and I felt like a winner. The candles burned low, and the storm finally began to pass. We spent the rest of the night chatting on the couch, bodies touching slightly, testing the waters. When the sun came up, a new day was beginning, and this one felt different. There was something new ahead of us, and I did push it even more. 3 months later, the routine now was taking care of the shop. My princess and Tatsuya and Haruki were all there as well. I was having fun with them around. Comfortable, familiar. He downed his guards with the passing of time. We went to dinner alone. The movies, family activities. He even taught me not how to kill a plant. Weekends meant houses filled. His or mine. We were closer than ever. But I wanted more, and I was patient enough. He opened up to me with other stories, fears, and funny tales. It was another regular Saturday, and this time we were at his house. The smell of flowers could even be sensed on the second floor, and that detail started growing inside of me with more intensity every time I slept there. Not on the same bed, unfortunately. It was raining softly again. Yay, winter. The air was calm. The kids were asleep, and we're sitting on the floor near the couch playing chess. "I feel like an old man doing this," he joked. "It's good for your head." It's good for your head, oldie. He laughed and made his move, then sighed, running his hand through his hair. A tickle I've come to know he'd do every time before he said something personal. It's been a while since I felt fine, he admitted to the night. I looked at him with the most warmth expression I could and caressed his free off the board hand. Sometimes, fine is all you need to start. Or keep going. He intertwined his fingers through mine, and my heart almost skipped a beat. Our eyes met longer than usual. He was letting the guard down, and I wouldn't waste it. I moved the other hand up his arm, caressing him slowly, enjoying how his skin bristled. He leaned closer, as if wanting to be touched even more, and I was so happy I could have a heart attack any time. You're relentless, he murmured, with a smile. I grinned. And you're stubborn, I said as I shrugged. Seems like you're a match to me. I could see the flickers of amusement in his eye, and I noticed the second he leaned forward, just a few inches, but I observed everything about him, so I knew that was my chance. I closed the distance between our faces, our lips meeting in a slow, testing kiss, filled with unspoken words. He kissed me back. It felt exactly what it was, a kiss of acceptance. I stepped forward, something he couldn't control, and neither of us thought we'd have it again. I finished the touch with a sweet kiss on the cheek, and touched his nose with mine. I know it's redundant already, but I really care about you. He nodded, brushing the tip of his nose into mine, kissing me again. Now with a little more hunger, I grabbed his hair a little bit, and he didn't flee, so I enjoyed my opportunity, making him feel how much I cared and wanted him. When I pulled away, I finally saw his walls down on the floor. I know, and I'm ready to try, he said in between slow breaths. I caressed his face, admiring the way he left his head relaxing on the palm of my hand. So, can I officially call you my boyfriend now? Or do I need to push even more? I teased. He blinked in surprise, then laughed, despite the flush on his cheeks. You're impossible, he said. That's not a nod, I said, leaning slightly, looking for another kiss. Tatsuya touched my lips with his finger, stopping me, and the tenderness in his eyes touched me in a few places I didn't even know I had in me. Fine, but don't make me regret this. You won't, I promised him. We kissed again and enjoyed the chess match until we got bored. For the first time, we slept in the same bed. Hopefully, forever. Conclusion. It didn't take much for things to escalate. Tatsuya bloomed like his flowers, and sooner than I expected. We were moving in together. We chose his house because it was bigger, and I made sure to only accept once I was convinced about letting me in his whole sacred ground. The adjustment took a while. He was meticulous. I was a bit messy. But somewhere between my burnt attempts at breakfast and the schedule of the house chores, we finally found our rhythm. The kids adapted even faster. They embraced themselves as siblings, probably even before we started dating for real, and that erased both our minds. Life was different. Fuller, the flower and music shop kept us busy, and at the end of the day, it was us four in a house, living our warm, smelly, cozy life. The end. Have you ever allowed yourself to love again despite being deeply hurt? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force. And stay wholesome.